Welcome to Culture Screen, where we analyze culture. In this episode, we are summarizing the 5th episode from Season 5 of the Sopranos series titled Irregular Around the Margins. The episode first aired on April 4th, 2004. In the beginning, we see Tony bumps into Adriana at the Crazy Horse, Adriana's club. We see Tony is starting to spend a lot of time at the Crazy Horse now. Tony gets a bit upset that Adriana did not warn him of Meadow being at the club when Benny Fazio steps in and tells Tony that the two of their friends are 5 minutes away. This prompts Tony to exit the club. In a later scene, we see Adriana is driving around with her FBI handler when all of a sudden she grows so nervous that she almost has a bathroom emergency inside of the agent's car. Later on, we see Tony and Adriana both have separate doctor's appointments that coincide at the same time. Adriana is suffering from digestive issues due to the stress she is going through as an informant and knowing she can be whacked at any time. Tony, on the other hand, is having a wart removed from his head. We notice that Christopher is out of town selling stolen cigarettes, and his distance from Tony, as well as Tony's frequent visits to Crazy Horse, are causing sexual tensions to increase between him and Adriana. In one scene, Tony walks in on Adriana alone in the back office. They share their recent medical issues and start playing darts together. At first, Adriana tells Tony that she feared him at first when she first met him. Tony asks if she still fears him to this day, and she smiles and says no. The encounter almost turns sexual until Phil Leotardo knocks on the office door and interrupts Adriana and Tony. Adriana walks out, and Phil is left questioning the two of them being together alone in the office, especially knowing that Adriana is Chris's fiancée. As a result of the encounter Tony had with Adriana, Tony seeks therapy again with Dr. Melfi. Tony explains to Melfi that nothing happened between the two of them, but that he knows something could have happened, but he did not go through with it. Tony does not tell Melfi the entire story. He tells Melfi that he himself was able to control himself recently, but he does not know if he would be able to do so again, when in reality, he did not control himself. The only reason he stopped escalating with Adriana was because Phil Leotardo knocked on the office door and Adriana walked away. This causes Dr. Melfi to think Tony has reached a milestone in his ability to control his impulses, when in fact he has not. In another scene, we see Adriana speaking about the encounter with Agent Sanseverino. Sanseverino redirects their conversation and tells her that she must find a way of getting closer to Tony in order to gather additional intel on the DeMeo crew. That same night, Tony goes back to the Crazy Horse, and Adriana says she will be spending more time keeping her eyes on the business rather than in the back office. However, at the end of the day, when they are closing up, she and Tony decide to drive out together in order for Adriana to make a pickup from her local pusher. On the way there, Adriana and Tony talk about women who may be interested in him. Adriana suggests an employee from the Crazy Horse, but Tony thinks she is too old as she is over 30. Tony asks Adriana about Danielle, the agent she brought into his house previously. Adriana gets a bit nervous and says that she drowned at a picnic. Tony finds the story a bit off, and a second later, Adriana screams for Tony to watch out for a raccoon on the road. Tony steers to avoid the raccoon, and the two end up crashing and flipping the car on its side. The scene ends with Tony and Adriana at the hospital. Tony is released, but Adriana has to stay due to the severe injuries she sustained from the accident. Remember, I am summarizing the entire series, so subscribe and click on the notification bell so you don't miss the next episode. I will be reviewing other TV shows and movies as well. Let me know what you would like me to summarize in the future in the comments section below. Also, follow us on Instagram and Twitter for additional content. I thank you for your support. As we catch up with Christopher, we see he learns Adriana was involved in an accident by the two men who received the shipment of his cigarettes. When Christopher picks up Adriana from the hospital, he berates her for being in Tony's car at 2 a.m. alone and driving to Dover, far away from where she lives. Adriana tries to explain to Christopher that nothing happened between her and Tony, but Chris tells her that she should think about how this will look to the other fellas and what it'll do to his reputation. Just as Christopher and Tony imagined, the rumor begins to spread throughout all the crews. As the story continues to spread, it also evolves into one where Adriana was quote-unquote distracting Tony while he was driving. Christopher goes to Tony to talk about the accident, and Tony tells Chris that nothing happened between him and Adriana. Tony goes as far as swearing it on the life of his children. Christopher storms out of Tony's office. When Chris heads over to Satrialis, he grabs a sandwich and walks in on the fellas laughing. They are all laughing at the expense of Christopher, and he grows irritated and throws his sandwich at Vito Spatafore. The others hold on to Vito as Vito stands up to fight Christopher. Chris then races home and proceeds to harm Adriana, kick her out of the apartment, and lastly, he ends up breaking his sobriety by drinking vodka stored in his freezer. Later on, Blundetto, Tony's cousin, visits Tony to tell him about how unhinged Christopher has become after hearing the rumor. Tony surrounds himself with his capos back at the Bada Bing, and they wait for Christopher upstairs overlooking the entrance. When Christopher arrives at the Bada Bing, he is quickly apprehended. Tony and the crew head out to an undisclosed location where they have Christopher kneel. Tony explains to Chris that he must accept that he did not do anything with Adriana, and that if he cannot accept that, he will have no choice but to put him away for good. Christopher does not agree with Tony, and this prompts Tony to draw on Christopher, but Blundetto interrupts Tony and tells him he has an alternative. Blundetto and Tony head over to the hospital to speak to the doctor who helped Tony and Adriana the night of their crash. Blundetto explains to the doctor that Adriana had marks around her neck indicating that she was in fact wearing her seatbelt. This fact would prove that on impact, Adriana was not performing any activity on Tony but was rather seated straight up in her seat. Christopher understands that Tony is correct, but ends by telling him that regardless of what the truth is, people will see him as a joke from now on, regardless of what is true or not. In another scene, Agent Sanseverino meets with Adriana and is shocked by how she looks. She pushes Adriana to have a wire installed at the Crazy Horse, but she adamantly refuses. Later on, Tony returns to Carmela and tells her that the rumor going around is not true. They debate, but in the end, Carmela is persuaded by Tony and she accepts to help Tony by going to dinner at Vesuvio's with him. Along with them, we see Christopher and Adriana, as well as Blundetto with his mother. The dinner serves to demonstrate that there is no animosity between Tony and Chris. We see the gang is also present at the restaurant. Vito Spatafore heads over to Tony's table and he shakes Christopher's hand. In the final scene of the episode, Tony looks to his left at Carmela, perhaps missing her after all. That was episode number 57, titled Irregular Around the Margins. To watch the next or previous episode summary, click on the link in the description or at the end of this video. Also, consider supporting us on Patreon, follow us on Instagram and Twitter. I'll see you on the next one.
Well, nothing happened, but it could have very easily.
We upload new videos every week, so subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to hit the like button as well. Click the notification bell to be notified of when we upload these videos. See you on the next episode of Culture Screen.